We're now on Daf Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Beis. We're continuing the Mishnah. And Shochat Bachutz Vehela Bachutz Chayev. This is really a pella. He did the Shechita outside of the Migdash. And obviously the carbon is possible, and yet he's Chayev Allah Bachutz. Very strange. Nimtza. So we could convert everything that we learned in the Mishnah into the following principle, the following klal, which the Gemara is going to try to explain. Derech hechshero bifnim, pturo bachutz. So if he wants to do it b'derech hechshero, means the kosher way inside, and we're talking about a bird, then he has to do malika. And now it says in the Mishnah he's potter bachutz. That's not so. Look at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says amolikas ha'of bifnim vehela bachutz chayev. Very strange. The Gemara is going to have to try to patch this up a little bit. Vaita derech hechshero mi bachutz pturo bifnim. If he's chayev Allah bachutz, and what do we say before in the ratio of the Mishnah about achiv Allah bachutz? We said that that's a case of a malika that was bifnim, and then he was mal bachutz, then he's chayev. So what does it mean, pturo bifnim? I don't get it. What kind of pturo bifnim? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we're going to have to see the Gemara to try to unravel this mystery. Let's go on. Till now, we've been discussing the Shita of the Tanakama. Rabbi Shimon Omer, and again, we're going to have to wait for the Gemara to understand Rabbi Shimon, Kol shechayavan olav b'chutz, is chayavan al kayotze bo bifnim shehela b'chutz. So now, chayavan ala b'chutz l'chora, according to Rav Shimon, would include both malika and shchita, which we'll have to figure out if that's actually so. Then let's flip it around. Let's say he did either the shchita or the malika bifnim, and he was mala b'chutz. He's chayev. Chutz, but there's one case where even Rabbi Shimon would agree, and that's the shoche bifnim u'mala b'chutz, because if he shechted it bifnim, then it's invalid, and therefore how can you be chayev b'chutz? So Gemara says, Hayech Shero. Let's understand how you could make sense out of the word Hechshero. Right? The Mishnah says, Derech Hechshero mi b'fnim. Which means that he did what he had to do for Kashrus HaKarbon b'fnim, and then he's potter mibachutz. Why should he be potter mibachutz? I mean, that's gufa the whole parsha of mala of halah, that you chayev bachutz because you mala that which was kosher. Is chiyuvo who should be chayev? Tni chiyuvo. So that's what I said before, that we have to patch up this Mishnah. So if derech hechsher b'fnim, chiyuvo b'chutz, he's chayev b'chutz, because you're only chayev b'chutz for that which was kosher mibifnim. Then we get to Rabbi Shimon, and we don't know, and the Gemara is going to have to offer a number of different possibilities as to what Rabbi Shimon is talking about. What's he referring to? Ahechi koi. Which part of the Mishnah is he going on? Ilema Reisha koi. And what does it say in the Reisha? Hamolikis ha'of bifnim ve'ela b'chutz chayav. And it's impossible for Reb Shimon to deny that. What's his dissenting view? Then the Mishnah continues in the Reish, and it says, Molak b'chutz ve'ela b'chutz potter. So that makes sense, right? How can you argue against that? I mean, he did everything b'chutz. There was nothing done b'fnim. V'yomer le Reb Shimon, and this is according to the first possibility in Reb Shimon, ki hechi de b'fnim mechayev b'chutz nami mechayev. So, l'chora, he's talking about a case where he did the malika inside, and he's chayev now for halah b'chutz. So far, so good. And now he's saying, b'chutz nami mechayev. Okay, that makes sense, right? Bifnim, he did a malika, now he's chayev for halah b'chutz. Is high kol shechayav halah b'chutz. The language of Reb Shimon is not precise because he says chayav halah b'chutz. He should have said kol shechayav halah bifnim mi boile. So now the Gemara is going to have to take a different approach to explain Rabbi Shimon's Shita and why he disagrees with the Mishnah. So we'll have one or two more minutes. Ella, the Gemara says, Ki hechi de bachutz lo machayev, bifnim nami lo machayev. Right? If he did malika bachutz, he's not chayev. Again, we have to figure out why, but he's not chayav. Maybe because, he didn't burn the bird. I don't know. And he says now, is bifnim nami lo chayav. So if he did the malika inside, and then he burnt the oaf on the outside, he's not chayav. Why not? Hi kol she'ein chayav halah b'chutz mi boile. Now, Reb Shimon should have said that if he's not chayav on the chutz, then b'fnim nami lo chayav. El ha'sefer koi. Before we go on, I just want to read to you a few lines here. He says, the Mishnah is pointing out that while malika performed on a bird inside, which is kosher, and that causes you to be chayav for chutz, in the case of shechita, it has the opposite effect. If the shechita was performed on the oaf b'chutz, then it causes the one who offers the oaf on the inside, to offers the oaf on the outside, he's going to be chayav. Well, if he performed it inside, then he causes the one who offers the bird to be potter. Ela sefer koi. This is where we were holding. So now we're going to say that Reb Shimon is referring to the last part of the Mishnah, where it says hashochet of bifnim vehela bachutz potter. And that makes a lot of sense because instead of doing malika bifnim, he did shchita bifnim, and he passes the carbon, and therefore it's not royal pesachol moed. It's not nitfas in the chiyuv halah. But shochet bachutz vehela bachutz chayav. That's a little bit of a pella. He did both the shchita and Allah b'chutz, and he's chayev. Amalei Reb Shimon says, Ki echid b'fnim lo machayev. Is b'chutz nami lo machayev. Right? If he did the shchita b'fnim, then he's not going to be chayev for halah b'chutz. Because as we said before, that kills the carbon. Literally and halachically. So the same thing applies if he does the shchita on the outside, he's not chayev for halah b'chutz. But if that's been the case, the Gemara is still not happy with the language. Hai kol she'ein chayavim miboilin. Reb Shimon should have expressed himself in a different way. He should formulate it by saying that any carbon for which he's not chayev for offering it up. So the Gemara says, Ella, we're going to try another possibility to explain Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon is referring to the Tanakama who said, with regard to shchita that was done outside, and he's saying, Kol hechi devachutz mechayev b'fnim nami mechayev. If he did the shchita on the bird outside of the mikdash, he's chayev for halah, and so too, if he does the shchita on the inside, he becomes chayev for halah. Gemara says that's impossible. Haktani chutz min hashochet bifnim v'mala b'chutz. This is exactly the case in which Rabbi Shimon agrees that my ruling doesn't apply. So this can't be the case regarding that he says the ruling itself. Oh, now we introduce Ze'iri. And if we've proven that Reb Shimon is not referring to any one of the Tanakhama's rulings in our Mishnah, then maybe there's another ruling of the Tanakhama, which is the subject of Reb Shimon's argument and his dissent. Shchitas behema b'layla ikabenayu. The machlokas from Reb Shimon Tanakhama is in a case where he shechted the animal at night. V'hachi ka'amar. This is what the Mishnah had in mind. If he shechted the animal inside, but he did it at night, and therefore he passes the korban, now he's malit bachutz, and he burns it on an altar outside, he's potter. It was already possible. Shachet bachutz balayla, if he shechted it outside at night, vehela bachutz, chayet. And Reb Shimon says, Kol shchayovin ale b'chutz, chayovin al kayotzi bo b'fnim v'hela b'chutz. Chutz min hashochet of b'fnim v'hela b'chutz. So Reb Shimon is now arguing that if he's chayav b'chutz, then he's chayav kayotzi bo b'fnim v'hela b'chutz. So Reb Shimon holds that just as one is chayav for offering a korban b'chutz that had a shchita at night, and that shchita took place outside of the mikdash, so too he's liable for offering a sacrifice slaughtered at night inside the mikdash. And the reason Reb Shimon holds that one is chayav for offering up outside a korban that had a shchita b'layla inside the mikdash is because he holds that such a korban does have post facto, meaning im olu, acceptance on the mizbeach lo yard. Rav Amar, another explanation of this machlok is kabbalah b'kli chol. If the Kabbalas Adam was done in a Kli Chol. Again, it has nothing to do with that whole discussion that we had before about Allah Bachutz. And so, for the Hachim Kamer, here's what the Mishnah says. If the Kabbalas Adam was in a Kli Chol, that passes the korban, therefore there's no Chi of Allah Bachutz. Hamakabel b'Kli Chol Bachutz, but if he was Makabel Adam, somehow magically, in a klichol while he was standing outside. Vehela b'chutz, and then he was maleh. Is Reb Shimon is Tanakama holds Yechayav. Reb Shimon Omer Kol Shechayovin Olav Bachutz Chayovin Al Kayotzi Bo Bifnim Vehela Bachutz. So if he would have been chayav for offering up the carbon outside the mikdash in the initial avoda, which was performed bachutz, is then he's chayav al kayotzi bo bifnim vehela bachutz. So Reb Shimon holds that just like a chayav for being makriv a carbon when there was kabbalas hadam in a klichol, but it was outside the mikdash, so too is chayav for halas carbon of a carbon whose dam was niskabel inside the mikdash, but in a klichol. And Reb Shimon holds he's chayav in this case. He holds that an animal whose blood was received in a vessel that's not a klishos to sanctify it, then post facto it cannot be accepted on the mizbeach. And finally, the Gemara offers another explanation. Ashta, the Tani Avud Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak Hamolek Of Bifnim Vehela B'chutz Chayav. Fine, he did the Malika inside. Now he's Chayav Allah B'chutz. Molak B'chutz Vehela B'chutz Pot, which makes 100% sense because he did the Malika outside the mikdash. But Rav Shimon says Yechayev. So even though the Malika was done outside, Yechayev Allah, Rav Shimon Hasam Koi, and Rav Shimon is actually referring to the beginning of our Mishnah, which we rejected before, Utni, but add something to the text of the Mishnah. Kol shechayoven ola bifnim vehela b'chutz chayoven ola b'chutz.